Hi everybody, I hope you are all well. It's that time of year again. How has this happened so quickly? It's time for my review of the year. So I've just got my spreadsheet up on my screen where I keep track of everything that I have read through the year. And I got through 46 books on this channel, and that came to 16,577 pages. And just so that you're aware, I only count the amount of pages that I read. So for the books that I didn't finish, which I think there were about 4 or 5 of them this year. Yes, 5, sorry. I only counted the number of pages that I actually read, which was about 100 or just over in that page count. So yeah, wow, 46 books and 16,500 pages. That is insane. Oops, sorry, I'm just going to move out my screen. There we go. So yeah, I had a really interesting year of reading, because in 2020, with COVID going on and everything, my number of books that I read dropped. I remember, because obviously the entire world was being distracted by other things. And so yeah, so when 2021 came around, I was back into my flow of reading again, and so I was like getting through books really quite quickly. And I think I've nearly doubled the amount of books or something that I've read in 2020. So yeah, wow. So I got through a lot of books, and there was such a real mix of genres, such a real mix of authors. There were very rare number of books actually of authors that I previously read, and there was one author, Laura Purcell, who I fell in love with her, but I got introduced to her books this year, and I've read all 4 of her books this year because I fell in love with them. So yeah, it's been a really interesting mix this year, and opened my eyes to various different things, like self-published, and my sister introduced me to like Bills and Moon books, and so yeah, I kind of just let myself open to anything and everything. I mean, I've always been like that before anyway, but I think I meant more widespread this year, because I was back in my reading kind of zone and pattern and that, and I was like, right, let's go. And so yeah, and after my year 2020, when I wasn't able to buy any books, I bought a ton of books, and I've done that again, but you'll see that in a separate video. What this video for is to tell you my best and worst reads of the year. This time, I mean, last year it was like that. I could tell you my best worst throughout the course for months before I had to do that video. I knew what my best and worst reads were. Obviously what I was reading at the time might have slightly changed possibly, but I think it pretty much stayed exactly the same. This year I have spent days thinking about it. I've sat and looked at the pile of books, and I've been ranking them and stuff throughout the morning, and it's been so difficult, but I think I've done it. So I'm going to start off with the worst books, I think. So they're just right here next to me on the sofa. And just so you know, for both best and worst piles, I have got a joint 5th place, because it was so hard to separate. All the others, for the second and first, are just single books. There's no joint stuff going on here. But for 5th place, I found it so hard. So I had to put 2 books for each pile. So here we go. Here are my 5/6 worst books of the year. And in joint 5th place, we have Sourdough by Robin Sloan and The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osmond. The Thursday Murder Club being the best-selling Christmas book for 2020. It was just dire. it was so strange. There was stuff going on in it that would never happen in real life. The way it was constructed was bizarre. What is the point of us having a murder? I should be holding up this book, but this is what I'm talking about. Why is it that we're having this murder kind of investigation where we're following the OOPs, figuring it out, but we're learning stuff about the murder from the perspective of people involved with it, 3 steps ahead of where the OOPs are who are investigating it. It was a bit clunky. It was just a bit weird. And so that was the Thursday Murder Club. And then we have Sourdough, which I thought I would like. Ariel Bissett was the one who set me onto this because she was reading it, and I thought it sounded interesting, but it turned out to be this really weird book of a woman who naturally is able to make sourdough perfectly, undercover bread organizations and explosions, and just like, what the hell is this book? I thought this was about a woman who was, healing herself and dealing with mental health issues and such, and using cooking to help her through that. Instead, it turned into this like Hollywood adventure plot thing, which was just absolutely ridiculous. So that's joint 5th place. In 4th place, it is the debut novel If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, a book, Shakespearean actors, which was truly condescending, just so uncomfortable to read, completely different than what it was described as being. Just left a terrible taste in my mouth, and I couldn't abide it. But how I've never read a book so condescending in my life. It was just dire. So there we go. 4th place goes to If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. 3rd place, a book that I thought I would really like because I'd seen the author talk about it multiple times, and I really like the author. I think she's a really interesting woman, but the book itself was dire, and that is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo, a book that basically talks about black women in England and the black women's kind of experiences and such from multiple generations. But the characters were just pure obnoxious. Some of them I just wanted to scream at. I thought it was going to be a book that would be kind of welcome me in to a culture that I know little about, and instead it kind of felt like I was being hit over the head multiple times, basically making me feel like a piece of shit. And I couldn't stand it. I don't know how people can sit through this book and not feel personally kind of attacked, to be honest. It didn't work for me. It didn't work for me. So that was Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. Number 2. It was in fact the first book that I read of 2021. I thought it would be a good start to the year, and it wasn't. It was Jaws by Peter Benchley. I love the film Jaws. I always have, since I first watched it as a teenager. And I hoped that the book would be just as good, and it's terrible. Thank Christ that Steven Spielberg rewrote the ending and took out the most disgusting, racist, misogynistic aspects of this book, which just made me, I was shook. Made my stomach turn. I was like, holy fuck, what the hell is this? And it just, It was so wrong on so many levels. Go watch the film, guys. Never pick up the book. It's rare that I say that, but it's true for this one. So at number 2 was Peter Benchley's Jaws. And finally, in at number 1, my worst read of the year, which I read about, I think, a couple of months ago, or a month, or maybe a month, I'm not too sure, between 1 and 2 months ago. And that is The Murder of Harriet Mockton by Elizabeth Haynes, a fictional book of a real-life Victorian murder, which put Harriet Mockton as the footnote of her own death, and just completely ravaged this entire thing. There was one person in particular who was very well respected. There were plaques in a church and such dedicated to him for his work and such, and she made him into a paedophile and child molester. And it's like, really, is that really showing respect? There's one thing of saying, right, this is a fictional account inspired by X event that happened, but I want to clarify at the beginning of this book that this is totally made up. I have made these, changes from a writing perspective and doesn't necessarily reflect the truth. The fact that she doesn't say that at the beginning of the book therefore implies that the way in which that she writes about these people and their lives and everything is true to life, when that I don't think is the case. And that is really disgusting. I hate the fact, that Harriet becomes the footnote of her own death. And I just completely lost respect for Elizabeth Haynes as I read this. I just couldn't believe what the hell I was reading. And I thought it was completely disrespectful, and I just couldn't go there. And the fact that Jaws was my number 1 spot from January until the point where I read this book, where this knocked it off the top spot, I think that tells you how much I hated this book. So there we go. So my top worst reads: joint 5th was The Thursday Murder Club and Sourdough. 4th was If We Were Villains. 3rd, Girl, Woman, Other. 2nd, Jaws. And number 1 spot, The Murder of Harriet Mockton. So there we go. That's the worst. So let's brighten up this review of the year with my favourite reads. And this was really difficult. This was so difficult. I went back and forth. I was rearranged. Oh my God, it was so hard, guys. So hard. But here we go. As mentioned before, I've got a joint 5th place in this list, but all the other books, 4th to 1st, are single books. So in 5th place, we have The Ichabog by Jk Rowling and My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. It came very close to The Christmas Pig and The Ichabog being 5th, and this being 4th, and rearranges that. But I was like, okay, although I suppose you could say I praised The Christmas Pig more, overall for themes and everything, I still feel that The Ichabog is stronger than The Christmas Pig. That is very hard for me to say because they were both brilliant reads. But for, the fantasy story, for multiple themes being covered, multiple lessons that are being taught to children in this book in such a wonderful way, I just thought The Ichabog had to rank above The Christmas Pig. It was wonderful. I loved every minute of it. So clever, so beautifully constructed, so wonderful overall. Brilliant. And My Dark Vanessa, one of the toughest reads of the year for the sheer power of it. There's a lot of heavy stuff in this book. I would say it's also a trigger book for various levels of abuse. But it was one of the most stunning reads, which still leaves a mark with me. I can never let this leave my bookcase. Truly fascinating to read, and a powerhouse by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I very much want to read more of her books. I think it would be amazing. So those are my joint fifth place, Ichabog and My Dark Vanessa. In fourth place, it's The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, a wonderful book talking about mental health and the choices that we make in life and how we define ourselves. I actually, after reading this, I recommended to my sister and our friend Sarah, who both read it and loved it, and I also lent my copy to my mum, who also loved it as well. It's absolutely wonderful read, had me crying my eyes out, and the concept of us having a library with all different possible lives that we could have led, and to be able to figure out what was great and such about our life, and let us see the world in a different perspective. It was a wonderful concept, and I will read this over and over and over again. I loved it, and I'm really, they're making a film of it, and I'm really excited, but at the same time I'm terrified because I want them to get it right. Really want them to get it right, but it's in the early stages, so, you know, we'll just have to see what happened. But yes, I really love The Midnight Library. It just spoke to me. So it comes in at number 4. At number 3 is a book I think my sister's probably going to go, why wasn't it higher? And I'll explain why when I get there. Number 3 is Jane Eyre's Husband by Tara Bradley, a self-published novel through Amazon telling the life of Jane Eyre's husband, Mr. Rochester, from the beginning of his life all the way to the end of his life, which is about 30 years after the book of Jane Eyre, and throughout the course of the stories. This was the most beautiful love letter to Charlotte Bronte, to Jane Eyre, to every character, oh my god, it was wonderfully put together, so atmospheric. I just felt absolutely in love with this. I cried, I laughed, I just felt like Tara truly understands Jane Eyre in her gut, in her soul, in her heart, and so she wrote this wonderful, beautiful love letter to Jane Eyre and to Charlotte Bronte, and she shared it to the world. And as far as I know, it's her only book, and she should write more books. But yeah, if you want to get a copy, you can only get it through Amazon. It's a self-published book, but it is obviously printed, and absolutely stunning self-published novel. Wonderful. So Jane Eyre's Husband is number 3. Number 2, I absolutely fell in love with this author, so much so I listened to her entire podcast called Criminal Broads across, I think it was about 3 weeks. I was listening to it 24/7. I adored it. Number 2, it's Lady Killers by Tori Telfer, a woman who writes about female serial killers, and why is it that we remember their male counterparts but not them. And she looks at various different female serial killers throughout the world and throughout history and talks about them. Each of them have their own little profile. We get, there's one, various portrait artist drawings of each of them. It is so well written, it's ridiculous. Like, these are women who did the most atrocious things possible, but she writes about them in such a way that it doesn't like make you feel ill or anything like that. It's to the point, but it doesn't, it doesn't glorify the gore. It just says, right, let's look at what these women did and let's figure out why it is we don't remember them. And it's so beautifully done in such a succinct manner. It was just a fabulous read. And as I said, I really got into her podcast. I've been looking into her other writings. It's just opened the door to Tori Telfer for me, and I think she's brilliant. She should get more focus than she gets. So number 2, it's Lady Killers by Tori Telfer. And finally, my number 1 book of the year, the book that gave me chills throughout reading it, the book that just I could not put this book down. I still feel the chills. I still have it. I put it as number one as soon as I'd read it, and it has stayed there. And that is The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. I could have put a bunch of Laura Purcell's books together as number one, but I was like, no. I've done that before, where I've taken all the books I've read by an author and put them in a certain spot, and that's not right. I'm going to rank this properly. And I've only got the one book by Laura Purcell up there, and it has to be the one that just caught me. And that was The Silent Companions. It's her first published book, but it was the second of her books that I read. And I just, oh my God, I can still feel the chills. I can still feel my heart pounding. I can still feel the atmosphere, the cold. Oh my God, it was everything. Those characters, the locations, everything about it was brilliant. And my God, what a powerhouse. That opening sequence alone was just, wonderful, amazing. So there we go. My number one read is Silent Companions. So my top 5/6 for the year is The Ichabog, My Dark Vanessa, The Midnight Library, Jane Eyre's Husband, Lady Killers, and The Silent Companions. None of these are going to be leaving my bookshelf anytime soon. I will read these over and over and over again. I love them so much. So there we go. That's my review of the year. Wow, guys. It was a great year for reading. Great year for reading. And I want to thank all of you. Whether you only watch like 1 minute of one video, if you've watched all my videos, everyone who left a comment, everyone who subscribed. I cannot believe I've hit 500 subscribers now. That is insane, especially that I make a point, and I've said this before in reviews of the year, that I don't ask for subscribers. Because for me, I hate it when people ask to subscribe. Because for me, I will only subscribe to a channel if a series of your content makes me want to subscribe to it. I'm not going to do something because you tell me to. And so, so I make a point. I never ask people to subscribe. But yeah, so the fact that 500 of you have done that is insane. I do this as a hobby. This is just a bit of fun. And so thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for subscribing, for writing comments, recommending books, liking videos, any interaction that you've had with me. Thank you so much. It's been an amazing year. And I love you guys so much. Thank you. And so that's the end of 2021. I've had a great time reading, great time interacting with you guys, and let's see what 2022 brings. But that is a separate video, so head over there and see what I'm going to be up to for the new year. All right, guys, bye.